Welcome in, everybody. Ready to dive into another case with me.
Always ready. What have we got this time?
This one, well, it's the Grant Solomon case. And let me tell you, this is one that's going to keep us guessing. It's got twists and turns, conflicting accounts, you name it.
Oh, so we're talking about one of those cases where things just don't add up, huh? The kind that makes you question everything.
Exactly. So we're going to really try to get to the bottom of this one, figure out what happened to this young man.
Sounds intriguing. Lay it on me.
Okay, so Grant Solomon, 18 years old, a baseball star. Everyone in Gallatin, Tennessee knew his name.
Small town, everyone knows everyone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tragically, he was found dead on July 20, 2020, under his father's truck.
Under his father's truck? That's awful. What happened?
Well, the initial ruling was accidental death. His father, Aaron Solomon, said Grant was getting out of the truck to grab some equipment, and the truck, it just rolled back, trapped him underneath.
On the surface, it sounds like a horrible accident. The kind of thing you never expect to happen.
I know, right? But there are some pieces to this story that just, well, they just don't fit. Like, think about it. Aaron said the truck was in park, emergency brake-on.
Okay, yeah. Standard procedure.
So how does a truck in park with the brake on suddenly roll back?
Yeah, that's a good question. Was it on a hill or something?
Nope. Pretty standard street, no steep inclines, nothing like that. It's one of the first things investigators looked at. They said the terrain was flat, made it super unlikely the truck would just roll back on its own.
Huh. So what are you thinking the dad's lying then?
Not so fast. There's more. Witnesses said the truck was at a weird angle. Not the angle you'd expect if it simply rolled backwards.
Okay, yeah. Now that you mention it, I'm starting to see those puzzle pieces that don't quite fit, like you said.
Right. And get this, there were no skid marks.
None. Hold on, no skid marks. But wouldn't a truck rolling back hard enough to trap someone definitely leave marks?
Exactly. That's what's so strange. It's like the scene is missing a key element, something that would make it all make sense.
So we've got a truck that should have rolled back, a weird angle, and no skid marks. What did the police say about all this?
Well, they closed the case pretty quickly. No autopsy, just stuck with the accidental death ruling.
No autopsy. Wow, that seems, I don't know, a little rushed, given all the questions.
Yeah, it definitely raised some eyebrows. Especially with Grant's family. His sister, Gracie, and his mother, Angie, they were skeptical right from the start.
I can't blame them. I'd be suspicious too with all those things not adding up.
And they knew that Grant and his father, well, their relationship was strained, to say the least.
Strained how?
Well, Gracie was particularly vocal. She described Aaron as controlling, even abusive. Said he had mistreated both her and Grant for years.
Hold on. So now we're adding abuse into the mix. This is getting complicated.
Right, and it brings in a whole new layer to the case, maybe a motive that was completely overlooked in the initial investigation.
So we've got a questionable scene, a strained family relationship, and now allegations of abuse. Seems like enough to warrant a closer look, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But despite all the red flags, the family's pleas, the case stayed closed. No autopsy, no further investigation, just accidental death.
Wow. I mean, no autopsy. That's a huge piece missing, especially with everything else going on. It's like they didn't even try to get the full picture.
Right. It almost feels like the investigation was incomplete, like they stopped before exploring all the possibilities.
It definitely leaves a lot of questions unanswered. What was the reaction like from the people who knew Grant? Did they believe the story?
Well, the community was in shock. I mean, Grant was a star athlete, well-liked. Everyone thought he had a bright future. His death hit them hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. A young life cut short like that, it's got to be devastating for everyone who knew him.
Absolutely. And it left a lot of people feeling uneasy. Like that feeling you get when something just doesn't feel right.
That feeling that there's more to the story than what's being said, yeah.
And in this case, with all the inconsistencies and the family's doubts, that feeling was even stronger. Exactly. And as people started talking, whispering about what really happened, the Solomon family found themselves at the center of a growing controversy.
So it became more than just a private family matter. It turned into a public search for the truth.
Exactly. And that's where things started to get really interesting.
So the family, they decided they needed a fresh perspective. They brought in independent investigators.
Really? Like private detectives?
Pretty much, yeah. These guys, they were like forensic detectives, real pros. They went over every single detail, you know, the truck's position, those missing skid marks, even the terrain.
Makes sense. A fresh pair of eyes can sometimes see things that others miss. Did they find anything that backed up the family's suspicions?
Oh, absolutely. They found a bunch of things that just didn't add up with the official story. One of the biggest things was that truck angle. Remember how witnesses said it was at a weird angle?
Yeah, it didn't seem right for a truck that just rolled back.
Right. Well, these investigators, they used this 3D reconstruction technology, kind of like creating a virtual version of the scene.
Whoa, that's high tech.
It is! They took everything into account, the truck's specs, the slope of the street, even how the emergency brake worked.
So, like a virtual simulation of the accident.
Exactly. And guess what? The physics just didn't make sense. They said there was no way that truck, with the brake on, could have rolled back with enough force to trap Grant.
Wow. So the 3D thing basically debunked the dad's story.
Pretty much, yeah. And then there were those tire tracks, or rather, the lack of them. They said even a little rollback from a truck that heavy would have left some kind of mark.
Yeah, even on pavement, you'd think there'd be something.
Right. But there was nothing. No skid marks, no signs of the tires dragging or anything. Another piece that didn't fit.
So what did they think happened then, if it wasn't an accident?
They couldn't say for sure, of course. But they said, based on what they found, that foul play couldn't be ruled out. Too many inconsistencies, too many things that didn't make sense.
Man, that's got to be tough for the family to hear. Thinking their son's death might not have been an accident after all.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating that the police just stuck with their initial story, even with all this new evidence coming to light.
And to think, they didn't even do an autopsy.
I know, right? It's mind-boggling that they didn't do one in the first place. An autopsy could have told them so much what kind of injuries Grant had, whether they matched up with the dad's story or not.
It's like a huge missed opportunity, a key piece of the puzzle they just ignored.
Exactly. So the family, they decided to push for an independent autopsy. They figured it might give them some answers, some real evidence about what happened to Grant.
Makes sense. A second opinion from someone who wasn't involved in the original case. Did they manage to get one done?
Well, getting an independent autopsy isn't easy. You know, it's expensive, there's a lot of red tape, and sometimes the authorities push back.
So it's not as simple as just asking for one. There are a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Right. I actually don't have any info on whether they were able to get it done in the end, but the fact they were trying shows just how determined they were to find the truth.
Yeah, they weren't giving up, that's for sure. Sounds like they were willing to try anything to get justice for Grant.
Absolutely. And they were also pushing for the use of some newer forensic tech, stuff that wasn't around when the initial investigation happened. They figured these new techniques might be able to find evidence that was missed before.
Like what kind of tech are we talking about?
Well, things like advanced DNA analysis. You know, imagine finding tiny traces of sweat or skin cells on the truck, maybe from someone else who was there.
Oh, wow, like microscopic clues.
Yeah, exactly. That could totally change the story, right? Corroborate what Aaron said or maybe completely contradict it.
That's incredible. And what about the 3D accident reconstruction? Could that help too?
Oh, definitely. Imagine creating a virtual reality version of what happened that night. Input all the data, the truck specs, the terrain, what the witnesses said, everything.
So you could rewind the clock and see if the dad's story actually made sense.
Exactly. And maybe even reveal details that were missed before, like that weird truck position, the lack of skid marks, all of it. See if it actually fits with what Aaron said.
It's amazing what technology can do these days. Did the authorities ever consider using any of this new tech?
The family definitely pushed for it. They knew how powerful these new tools could be, how much they could change things.
And did the police listen?
There was talk about maybe reviewing the case, but nothing concrete. No sign that they actually used any of these advanced techniques.
Man, that's a shame. Seems like a missed opportunity to maybe finally solve the mystery and give the family some peace.
I agree. Makes you wonder why they were so resistant to using these new tools,
It's almost like they didn't want to admit they might have made a mistake.
Yeah.
Easier to stick with the original story, even if it doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Sometimes it's harder to admit you were wrong than to keep pushing a narrative that might not be true.
So after all that, the family's efforts, the independent investigations, the public outcry, the case just stayed in limbo. Officially closed, but still full of unanswered questions.
It's a situation a lot of families who question official narratives find themselves in. The fight for truth, it can be long, it can be frustrating, and it doesn't always have a clear ending.
Especially in cases like this where there's so much media attention, so many different opinions swirling around. It must have been overwhelming for the Solomons.
Oh, for sure. The media, they did a good job of raising awareness, but they also kind of created this divide. You had people who believed Aaron, thought he was innocent, and others who were totally on the family side.
It's like the truth gets lost somewhere in the middle. with everyone shouting their own version of the story.
Exactly. It really shows how important it is for the media to be responsible, to present all sides fairly and without bias.
So we've got a grieving family, a community divided, and a media frenzy. What happened next? Did the Solomon family ever get the justice they were fighting for? Did the truth about Grant's death ever come out?
You know, even though this case happened a while ago, what sticks with me is just how much the Solomon family's story resonated with people.
Yeah, it went way beyond their town, didn't it? Like it touched a nerve with people all over.
It did. I think it's because on some level, we all kind of relate to that feeling that something's not right, even when everyone's telling you it is.
That gut feeling you can't shake.
Exactly. And the Solomons, they had the courage to actually do something about it, to question authority, even though it was a tough fight.
Yeah, it was like David and Goliath, right? Little family taking on the system. And social media played a big part too, didn't it, in getting their story out there?
Huge part. The Justice for Grant campaign, it blew up online. People who'd never even heard of Gallatin, Tennessee were suddenly following the case, demanding answers.
It's amazing how social media can do that, connect people like that, give them a voice. But did it actually make a difference? In Grant's case, I mean.
That's the thing, isn't it? All that online pressure, it definitely kept the case in the spotlight. But the official response, it was slow, it was vague. They'd hint at maybe reviewing the case, say some things needed another look, but no real action.
So even with all the public outcry, the police basically stuck to their original story.
Pretty much, yeah. It's something you see a lot in cases like this. It's one thing to say, okay, maybe we made a mistake, but to actually do something about it, fix that mistake, that's way harder.
Yeah, it's easier to just keep things as they are, even if you know they might be wrong.
Exactly. And for the Solomons, after everything they'd been through, that had to be just crushing.
They have their hopes raised and then dashed like that, but they never gave up, did they?
Nope. They kept fighting, kept speaking out for Grant. Their resilience, it's incredible, seriously inspiring.
They never let go of that belief that the truth was out there, even when it felt impossible.
And their story, it's had a real impact. Other families facing similar situations, they've been inspired to speak up too, to challenge the official story, demand accountability.
The Solomons showed them it could be done, even if it's a long shot.
Exactly. They showed the power of just not giving up, you know? But, and this is the hard part, we still don't know what really happened to Grant.
Yeah. The official case might be closed, but the mystery's still there. All the unanswered questions, the doubts, they don't just go away.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces. You can see the general picture, but you'll never have the full picture.
And I imagine for the family, that's got to be incredibly tough to never really have closure, to always wonder.
I think it gets to a bigger question, really. What does justice even mean when you can't get those definitive answers? How do you find peace when there's still so much unknown?
Yeah, that's something to think about, isn't it? And I think that's what makes the Grant Solomon case so powerful. It reminds us that sometimes the fight for justice isn't about finding all the answers.
It's about having the courage to ask the questions, to challenge the status quo.
And to never stop searching for the truth, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. That's a lesson we can all take away from this case, and I think it's one worth remembering.